Welcome to I Love My HBCU ? The podcast where we express our undeniable love for HBCUs, but where we are also not afraid to address a few tough questions. So, sit back, learn a little, love a lot, and rep your HBCU. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of I Love My HBCU ? I have Chris Peay joining me today from Cxmmunity Media. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
And the is that accurate part is, and we're gonna get right into it with the names. The is that accurate part is, I know Cxmmunity is spelled Cxmmunity. Is there a reason for the X in Cxmmunity, and is it still accurate to pronounce it as community without the zero?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, we kind of live by like everything is made up. Like nothing in the world is real. Like everything just is what you say it is essentially. So I would say yes to answer the second question. You can name it or pronounce it community. It's spelled with an X though. It's just like a unique way. One, of course, the O was already taken. And so, we had to put the X, but the X is synonymous across like essentially all of like video game consoles. And so like if you think about like the Xbox, there's an X, there's a PlayStation, they have the X button. The keyboard, of course, there's an X, and then like a Nintendo, they always have an X. And so, for us, just future proofing diversity in esports and gaming and media, it's one of those things where X is like inclusive across the board. So like that's the cooler story, but the real story is that the O is already taken.
I love the fact that it's the coolest story that if you don't share the real reason, makes it sound as if you guys were so intentional with the X as opposed to the O. I'm going with that, the cooler story. I'm going with the cooler story. Speaking of names, the very first question I asked you even before we hit record was how to pronounce your last name. And you said there's a story behind it. So for those who are only listening as opposed to watching, Chris's last name is spelled Peay. And I wish this was like, we had like a live audience and randomly asked a few people, how would you pronounce that word if you saw it? Because myself and our segment producers, we took stabs at it and we were all wrong. So tell us the story behind your last name.
Yeah, so I'm starting to dig deeper into like my family history, kind of where we come from. So the story might not be as accurate. But it's also the same with community. Like there's a really cool story, and then there's one that may or may not make sense. But there's essentially my family, I guess a long time ago, kind of like had some sort of like spat. And so there was one side of the spat essentially that called themselves like PA, and that would spell Peay. And then the other side, they actually dropped the Y, and it was just PEA. And I guess that was like them getting back at the other side. And so then they just called themselves P. And so I just went with the one that sounded cooler.
That's exciting. That is so interesting. And I think you should share that story a little bit more. I really do. I really, really do. Because we said P. One of us said P as an option, and the other one said, I don't think it's that simple. I just don't think it's that simple. Clearly we were right on both of them. So it is Chris Peay. Chris, you are a alum of North Carolina Central University, and you're so many things. We've had so many conversations about you and your bio, believe it or not, before we hit record, without you even knowing about it. I'm several generations removed from one of our segment producers, and she tried several times to explain to me what esports is. And I think I know. But for the benefit of humans like myself who are perfectly okay admitting their ignorance, give us like the 30-second briefer on what esports is and what intrigued you to get into that space.
Yeah, so I'll say, I guess simply put, there's like competitive video game play. that is esports. And so there's like also, so on the flip side of that, you have casual gameplay. So where, you know, your nephew or son or daughter may just be sitting in front of the video game and they're playing by themselves. They play games such as, you know, like Crash Bandicoot or, you know, Pac-Man, things of that sort, where it's like just casual, you know, they're just kind of buying time or passing time. Competitive esports or video game play is, you know, called esports. And that's when, you know, you'll see essentially two teams going head to head and they're typically playing for a prize. So it's almost in the same similar, I guess, vein as like the NFL, the NBA. It's like esports, and they're winning really big money at the end of the day playing in these tournaments as well.
Speaking of big money, so I reached over. Speaking of big money, I don't want to get this wrong, so I actually want to read it, and it's part of your history. But I want to get it right for the audience to hear this because I found it insanely impressive. So you founded HBCU Esports League with the intention to increase diverse representation in the esports and video game industry. It is the world's first and only competitive esports league for HBCUs. And in their first 3 seasons, they amassed a total of 40 million live views and provided over $1.7 million in scholarships to HBCU students through competitive gameplay opportunities. Impressive.
Thank you.
Impressive. That is my way of giving you an opportunity to please tell us about all that you do, from community to HBCU Esports League. Give us a bit on that.
Yeah, sure. So community media, again, simply put, is a media tech company. Our mission is to future-proof diversity within esports, video games, and the media, you know, traditional entertainment industry. We essentially were founded on, you know, one single stat that said 83% of African American youth play video games on a daily basis. But then when you look at the video game workforce as a whole, there's only about 4% of African Americans that work within the space. And so for us, that's like a huge gap where, you know, we just saw essentially an opportunity. Atlanta, we both live in Atlanta. Myself, Ryan Johnson, my co-founder, we both live in Atlanta. You know, essentially Atlanta was, I think, one of the top 5 cities for esports and video games. And so it was like, you know, just perfect timing. So we founded community media with that mission that kind of led us to the HBCU Esports League. We're both HBCU alum. It really started as, you know, just competition, competitiveness against, you know, me and Ryan. He graduated from Oakwood University. I graduated, of course, like you said, from North Carolina Central University. And so we're like, yo, I bet my team could be your team in Call of Duty. And so we found students on campus, you know, got them going head to head in Call of Duty, and they weren't playing for anything at that point. But Twitch saw it. And so, you know, once Twitch saw it, you know, we kind of started to talk to Amazon. And then the rest is pretty much history.
Congratulations on all of it. I'm listening to you, and you know, you may not know. Let me say, I know that I have some students. I'm at Morgan State University, and I have some students who, when they speak video game language, that's what I call it, or when they do video game speak, I don't know what they're talking about half of the time. And so it kind of, it sometimes appears frivolous. It appears frivolous. Okay. And I'm thank you for laughing. Thank you for laughing. Because I'm so careful that I'm not being offensive, because I know it is not frivolous. But it sometimes appears frivolous. And what I love, the reason why I say congratulations, what I love about the bit you just gave us is, I hope that there is a student on somebody's college campus today that is listening to the manner in which the two of you started this and is inspired by the manner in which the two of you started this.
Yeah.
Your major was not computer gaming, it wasn't computer science. Your major is media and mass communication, if I'm not wrong. So the fact that you can have this major that is slightly different from what others might call just a hobby, and now it has become a great portion of what you spend your time doing, is impressive, and I hope inspirational for students who are currently confused about what it is they want to do. You have I'm not going to say it. Of course, I've read your bio, but shoot out for us some of the brands and the clients that you have been, or they have been lucky to have you work with them over the last few years through your company.
Yeah. First of all, I love that you admit your ignorance. That's like a huge thing of ours because I think people, and to your point, the youth feel like they need to have it all figured out, and we're like all in a rush all the time. And I have a very, it might be somewhat of a dark saying, but like we're literally in a rush to go nowhere. We all have the same destination, so let's just take our time and literally just learn every single day. But no, so to answer your question, essentially we work with brands such as like Verizon. So Verizon came on as our very first sponsor or partner, what we like to call it, for the HBCU Esports League. They came on season one. They really bought in. After season one, Verizon came back, and it was, we get media dollars, and so Verizon came back from their foundation, and they're just like, hey, I love what y'all are doing. We know that we love the mission. We want to buy into it. So they gave an additional $1 million to go towards building out esports labs on the campuses of HBCUs. And so we took half of that money. So essentially $500,000 went towards building out 5 labs on 5 HBCU campuses. So that was Morgan State University, of course, Howard University, Dillard University down in New Orleans, Louisiana. There was Delaware State University, and there's one more school. Oh, Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. The other half of that money went towards 5 students on each campus, focusing on STEM related majors. And so essentially each of those students received a $20,000 scholarship to be able to stay in school, continue their studies, but also use that STEM major and use that new STEM lab that they now have to learn more about gaming, learn more about, what it takes to be able to, if you want to be a professional gamer, you just want to work in gaming. But, just the biggest thing for us is just making sure that the students have access.
Chris, I don't know if you saw me. I'm smiling the entire time that you were speaking. You, guests like yourself, and in this moment, I'm just going to say you give purpose and meaning behind I love my HBCU question mark. One of the great reasons for doing this, I wanted, the question mark was questioning how much we love our HBCUs and how much that love is being actioned out. Like, what's the action behind this love? Everybody says they love their HBCUs. The question is, well, how do you love your HBCUs? And the smile on my face, I don't challenge people. I'm not in your face when I ask that question. Everything you just said gives an example to those who may not necessarily know how to action out that love for your HBCUs. There's no question that whether or not you see Chris Peay at homecoming, whether or not you see Chris Peay flying a banner of I love my HBCU through the chant, your actions let us know it's a commitment to the generations of HBCU students to come. You wanted to say something, sorry.
No, you're good. I think you kind of just struck something. It's like a love. I would say it started out as a love-hate relationship, and it's really just because at an HBCU you just can assume that you have limited resources. You don't have the same resources. We're in Durham, so we're right by Duke University. We're right by
Yes.
Chapel Hill. NC
Yes.
State is about 30 minutes away, and so the biggest thing is like you don't have as many resources, and so you'll look at that as a graduate and you're like, man, like I have a job, or the school didn't set me up right. But then to your point, after a while you kind of have to turn the camera around, and now I face it on myself, and I'm like, wow, I think I didn't do enough. And I didn't go to enough networking events. Maybe I partied too hard. Maybe I just wasn't focused, or I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I didn't have anything to work towards. But now, to your point, I do love my HBCU. I think the biggest thing is, I was really just talking to one of my line brothers, and we talked about, donating back to the school. And he donates back to the school. He just became a Hall of Famer for the football team. So shout out to him.
Do you want to
And
say his name?
yes, Carl Jones.
Okay.
I not want to know that he's a Hall of Famer. He doesn't want anyone to know about his successes. He's, it's quiet about it. I love it. But no. So to your point, I think the action is definitely speak, and I really didn't realize it. Um, I guess partly because I don't really do it for that reason. Or maybe we're just moving too fast. But no, we built out a lab at North Carolina Central. Of course, that was the second esports lab that we built. So I had to come home. Also built one at Oakwood University and Ryan's alma mater as well. So yeah, I think I do. I very truly do love my HBCU.
You do. Love is not a word. It is, but it's an action. And whether you choose to see it or not, again, you have broadcast to the world, thank you, Chris Peay, why the purpose of I love my HBCU question mark, because that was it. Spotlight HBCU alumni and students to showcase their love in action. And I don't even have to ask you that question because you've showcased for us.
Yeah.
I could literally keep talking, just talking with you, but I do want to bless you with our rapid fire segment because I'm learning, thankfully, that A, people love it. B, people are looking forward to the answers to
Yeah.
some of the same questions that I ask every single guest. So it's 67 seconds, and I'm going to give you a quick quiz. Why do you think it's 67 seconds of rapid fire as opposed to 60 seconds?
I would automatically, I guess, go to the year
I
1867.
love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. That's it. That's it. That's it. Not many people get it. So that's why I spring it upon people every now and then. I love you. If I'm allowed to say that, I absolutely love you for that. Okay, rapid fire segment, 67 seconds, and the clock starts after I read the very first question. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Describe your HBCU experience in one word.
Ooh. Eesh. I don't know. The first word that came to mind was exhilarating. I don't know why.
Exhilarating?
Yes.
Exhilarating. I'll take it. If your time in college was a song, what would that song be?
Um, life, lifestyle by I think it's Rich Gang, Rich Homie Quan, and Young Thug.
Lifestyle by Rich Homie
Quan.
Quan. You can tell I don't know it, right?
Yes, it's a great song though. You should.
Of course, I'm going to listen to it after this now. If you remember, what was your best meal in college?
Best meal in college was probably Chicken Wednesday. It
Chicken
never.
Wednesdays. Okay, we get that a lot, so you're in good company. Shout out your favorite professor or person at NCCU, if you remember.
Yeah, I think my favorite person at NCCU, will probably have to be Miss Kia Bell.
Okay.
Yeah, Miss Kia Bell worked in the PR office. I know this is rapid fire. I'm so sorry.
No
She worked
worries, no worries.
public relations office, and I was interning for her, and we're like still really good friends. And she looks out for me all the time. I
You're
love her.
right. It was rapid fire, and I just got the ding that the timer's up. But I always take the liberty to ask one more question. So I'm going to ask you one more question. On a scale of 1 through 10, how good of a student were you?
I'd say 10. I was a really good student.
Give us more. Give us more. He said it so confidently. I'd say 10. I was a really good student. Give us more.
I had a lot to lose, I think.
Mm.
First generation. And so, I have like a lot of younger cousins, nieces, nephews. And, they were all just looking at me. I think it's a lot of pressure. But I always just like to learn, just learn new things and kind of be in the know. I don't want to your point at always admitting our ignorance, literally asking questions as many times as possible because that's the only way you're gonna know anything.
I love it. I love it. And I love the nonchalant confidence with which you said the number. I was a 10. Of course, I was a 10. I love that. Chris, how did you select NCCU as your HBCU of choice? Give us your college choice journey.
So long story, I didn't know anything about college. I wanted to go to college to play football like any other young black man probably or basketball. I went to go play football at Fayetteville State University. So I played the first semester. I love Fayetteville State. I'll preface with that. But I didn't like Fayetteville State at the time.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, it was just a lot going on. It was they were like revamping, essentially revitalizing what the campus looks like now. Like now, the campus looks amazing. Back then, not so much. In
Hmm.
2012, I say back then. That's a decade ago. Wow. Yeah. So it wasn't as nice as it is now. So I had one of my good friends that I grew up with. He went to North Carolina Central. And then also, his best friend. And so I would come back and kind of hang out with him. It was like an hour away. And it's like, hey, I might like to come to this school. So I called my dad. I don't know how he did it. I ended up transferring like mid freshman semester. So I went to Fayetteville State for one semester and then transferred to North Carolina Central in January of 2013.
Wow, nice, nice. I also know, however, though, that you went to PWI for your master's. You went to Georgia State University. And I know it might sound like an unfair question because the whole nature of grad school is a little bit different than the nature of undergrad. I get that. But you've answered every single question I've asked you so far, so I have every confidence you're going to answer this one as well. um, compare the two. And the compare the two that I'm asking you here, I see the smile on his face. I hope people are watching this and not just listening. Compare this PWI and the your experience in a PWI as opposed to an HBCU.
So my experience was a little bit different. So my master's program it's a 12-month program. And my classes weren't on the main campus. They
Got
were,
it.
if you're familiar with Atlanta, they were in the Buckhead campus, which is, I think it's just like a building. Georgia State has produces the most Black student graduates every year out of, I want to say, any PWI in the world. So they're technically called like what would be like a predominantly Black institution, just not an HBCU. So Georgia State, it was a really good school. It was very fast. I went for my master's again, so another culture shock for me. To your point, because I want to say my cohort was probably a really good mix, a good diverse mix, but it was fast
Mm, mm,
from North Carolina Central, where you're with your professors, you have one-on-ones, and you ask me about my student time here
absolutely.
with all of my professors, asking them, what can I do to be, improving? What can I do to improve? What can I do to be a better student? What can I like? Just tell me something. Give me some feedback. At Georgia State, it's not so much. There's a lot of people that are looking for feedback versus an HBCU where people are kind of more laid back, and not as, I guess, worried about their studies, especially as an undergrad. Really having fun. Um, Yeah, I think that's about it. It's a really hard comparison because I wasn't like on campus,
That's fair.
but yeah, Georgia State is a great school. I'll say that.
I hear a lot of good things. I hear a lot of good things, actually. We also have some partnerships with them. So I hear a lot of good things. So, and I think that's a fair comparison or a fair point for you to make that because you weren't really there. And we're like not on the main campus anyway, it's not going to be as direct of a comparison. You talked about the love hate, and I appreciate you for bringing up the love hate. I've had different focus group conversations regarding I love my HBCU question mark. And Chris, I need you to have my back, sir, because Lord have mercy. Everyone, whenever they hear me ask the question, well, do you love your HBCU as much? And can we get really honest about some of the not so great things about HBCUs? They're like toast and stop, toast and stop. We can't talk about that. And I'm a strong believer that the only way we get better at some things is by admitting what those some things are, right? And if we're only discussing them behind closed doors, we don't necessarily get the opportunity of the breadth of resources that could come from the most unexpected of spaces to aid us in that. So back to your love hate. You talked about a previous, it's all love now, but you talked about a previous love hate relationship that you had with regards to NCCU. So I'm curious, what was your most either frustrating or challenging experience, aspect, whatever it is, about having attended your HBCU? Because I bet you are not alone.
That is a great question. I have a few. I'll say, I think this doesn't have anything to do with the school. But there was one summer where I needed to take classes. And so I think one of the most frustrating things is, not knowing what classes to take. Again, as a first generation college student, you're just thinking you're going to college, and literally, I had a hard time transitioning to online work. High school,
Hmm.
we weren't really doing anything online. It was all pen paper. We come to college and we had, I think it was called Blackboard. And so I wasn't reading my syllabus or syllabi.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about any of that. And so I also did not have an advisor to tell me any of that. I kind of felt like at one point in time, my advisor was working against me,
Hmm.
because like I didn't know what classes to take, and I really wasn't getting like the guidance that I needed. And again, it's first generation college student, so I'm literally just here, just kind of existing. So I think that was one of the biggest things, is really not feeling, I'll say, I won't say I didn't have, but not feeling like I didn't have the support that
Hmm.
I needed to kind of guide me through. It's almost like they wanted, I felt like they wanted to keep me here longer.
Hmm.
First, help
Hmm.
do all the things and take the proper steps I needed to be able to graduate on time.
Wow. You all of my vocal cues were were born out of, gosh, you spoke several words in that response. And when I say several words, I'm stealing my students. There's a student in my class who's like, Dr. Chosen, you just spoke a word. So that's you spoke several words. I know I'm saying it wrong because I'm not as cool as my students are. I know that. But that's what I mean. You bear with me for a hot second. You said something that is making me realize that perhaps, just perhaps, one reason why we might have some helicopter parents involved in their students' education at some of our HBCUs is because some of them were first generation college students who experienced almost identical what, because I've heard that experience before. I felt they were working against me. I don't know if my advisor really knew what they were doing, and I don't even know if I was being properly advised, because it looked as if you just wanted me to stay here longer. I think, Chris, you just gave us, this is an epiphany moment, at least for me. You just gave us at least a potential reason why some of those parents have become helicopter parents, and making sure they are involved more intimately with, is my student taking this? We don't want to hear from them. No offense. I don't want to hear from the parents. I want to work just with the student. But I hope everyone listening to this will enable some understanding as to a potential reason why. Thank you for giving that reason, because it's a real reason. And I think you're not the only one that's experienced that at HBCUs.
Yeah.
Um, you are a 10. So I don't know what advice you would give your freshman self, but I still want to hear it.
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. I think so. There's like an African proverb. It says,
Okay.
"The youth can walk fast, but the elders know the way." I'm
Oh, I'm writing that down. Go ahead.
saying I typically take out elders and say the experience. So the youth can walk fast, but the experience know the way. Um, and I say that to say, again, like, network, just talking to people, asking questions. That was one of the things where, I was very shy. I'll say, and I didn't like to talk to people. I didn't know how to start a conversation. I didn't know how to carry a conversation, or I just didn't want to. But now looking back at it, I wish I would have asked more questions. I wish I would have spent more time. I was still a 10, to your point, where to like I spent a lot of time with my professors. But I was more so just trying to be a great student and not necessarily a great professional, I guess.
Mm. So were you this is what I'm getting, and feel free to correct me, as in interrupt me like Toast and stop it. That's wrong. Um, you give me the student who stepped foot on campus was singularly focused on making sure that he was going to be the best academic student for himself, with very few obstacles in the way, which it sounds to me that the sacrifice might have been not being the most well rounded student. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, it's very accurate. I look at some of my peers. There was one girl who's in my cohort at Georgia State. She graduated from North Carolina A&T, which is our rival school, who's also having their homecoming on the same weekend as ours. But she had a lot of opportunities, and so brands would actually come to A&T and they'd set up and they'd recruit students. And, we didn't have that as much at North Carolina Central. It's also another thing, a big pet peeve of mine was like the career services department where it was like dated jobs and, it's like smaller companies that are looking to hire and no like real opportunities. But yes, I think the biggest thing is, just having the opportunity, I think just to ask questions. Sorry, I'm trying to remember your question.
No, no, no.
So yes, so I was more so focused on academics. I really just wanted like A's. I wanted a 4.0. And again, I wasn't really thinking about like, wow, like, this person did this, right? So this person worked in the news and they're my professor and I could just talk to them and they could probably introduce me to someone else that could then get me an internship or an opportunity. Instead, I was literally just focused on like getting an A or a B. So I would say like academics are extremely important, but it's not the only.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm thanking you because you currently, all your words, whether you realize it or not, are representative of several students that I get to talk to every single day. And that's not 2013 or 2012. This is 2023, 2024. And, and I know that we don't always listen to what other people are telling us, but I still want you, Chris, to give a word of advice to that student who you were, but who I see every day now, who, no matter how many times I might tell Naya, I know the 4.0 is important. I know it is. And Naya, I know you're worried about making an A in chemistry, making an A in this. But Naya, I need you to walk out with an education more than a college degree. Having walked Naya's shoes, Chris, give Naya, all the Nayas, all the former Chris's of the world, give them, if you will, just 2 practical steps that if you had this to do over again, because you said talking, but I want you to give a very practical, do this and do that.
Yeah, so I think there's another quote. We live by a lot of quotes. It basically says like the brave may not live forever, but the cautious literally never live. And so I think, in saying that, that's one of the things where, like, to your point of focusing on academia, where it's like, you just really have to take chances. I think, and I get a lot of flack for this probably, but with the exception of, legal, there's law, in the medical field, personally, I think the education system is somewhat outdated. I won't say fully, but it is outdated to a certain degree. And I think the biggest thing is really just finding those niche that pocket of people that are doing what you want to do, and literally just ask them how they got there. And keep talking to them and be their friend, or ask them what can you do for them. You're in college, you already probably don't have any money, so just do the work for free. And then everything will literally work out. That's how we have essentially community media and HBCU Esports League. It's all built on relationships.
Oh Lord, students, I hope you're listening. I know I'm going to make sure my students hear your words. Because several of them are discouraged by the shutdown. Several of them are discouraged by the no. How did you, relationships, right? How did you overcome the no? As in NO, and how did you overcome the shutdown? Other people call it rejection. My students use the term, they just shut me down, so I'm just not going back. I'm done. Give some words on that.
I always say, and I think Ryan's told me this too before I actually worked in sales. He's like, yo, I think everybody in the universe should work in sales, because then you literally you just get used to the no, and no never means no. And like, I say this facetiously, but also not like wanting to come off as like a douche, but literally, I don't think we can ever lose. I don't think anyone could ever lose or fail. It's as cliche as it sounds, it's literally a lesson. Like you fail for a short period of time. If someone says no, all right, cool. You just maybe ask the same question a different way, or ask at a different time, or ask a different person. But that's one person out of what 8.23 billion in the world. Like there's a lot of people to talk to. There's a lot of people that'll say yes, and literally all you need is that one yes. I can't tell you how many no's we get, but the one yes is the thing that might carry us in our business through the next 3 to 5 years off of one yes, and we might get 30 no's. So I mean, you just have to keep pushing, and there's. I listen to Charlamagne the God a lot. He always says like you have to have a DJ Khaled level of annoyance, and I think that's very true. You just have to keep pressing. You just have to persevere.
A DJ Khaled. I do not listen to Charlie much. I can't even get his name right. So yeah, my apologies. I don't listen to him as much. But wow, I do know who DJ Khaled is, and there is a level of annoyance there that I actually find inspiring. So I that's a good one. That's a good one. You've given us so many quotes. It's insane. And just some from you, not just the ones that you are quoting, but some literally from your own words. So there are a couple I'm stealing that I'm going to live by, just FYI. The 30 no's that you get, and I do want to belabor this just for a slight second. The 30 no's that you get, realistically doesn't feel good. So for everybody listening, and I think of my students a lot, but for everybody listening, because sometimes I see that it has beaten them down. And I heard you say you've got to keep pushing. What do you do? What does Chris do through the nose? Like through the nose, what do you do to just allow you not to focus on that being the answer? Because like you rightfully said, and my dad says it to me all the time, it's one yes. All you need is one yes. So how do you get through, or how do you make sure you get through the no's, especially when they are in succession?
I think at this point it kind of rolls off. But I'll say, like your dad said, like you only have to be right once. And so knowing that, it becomes very easy to just let it roll off your back. But two, to also just I guess just keep pushing.
Keep
I don't know.
pushing.
Yeah, it's a hard question. Like I guess something that we do, and just knowing like we learn from literally every single
Everything. Yeah.
like Ryan can tell you he's like the smartest guy in the world. First of all, he can tell you when they're building a city, when the Super Bowl is going to come to that city because of the way that they're setting it up, and it's just like you don't know. What we like to say is you don't know what you don't know, but you're responsible for what you don't know. Because if you want something, like you just have to figure it out. And so everyone isn't going to try and help, and everyone isn't going to try and push you to get to where you want to be. I've heard no from some of the closest people that I thought were, my mentors, and I wanted them to do something for me or help me out. And I might not have heard a response, but I mean, there's probably 20 people doing that same thing. So, I mean, if I haven't hit all 20 of those up, then what do I have to lose? So we have nothing to lose. And eventually just stop caring about what people say and what people think, because it doesn't matter. And I think the biggest thing too for that is like everyone is scared of rejection because of their own ego. But when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, right? No, everybody thinks that someone is like looking at them or thinking about them or talking about them. But like, I don't think anyone thinks about anyone but themselves.
That is true.
No one cares.
That is true. So that is true, and the laughter that came from that is this is a frivolous example, but I think it's going to hit home for you and everybody listening. I've watched. Oh gosh, I'm going to call her out. My older sister is the selfie queen, literally, and if she's taking a picture with other people in that shot, and you're asking her if the picture looks good, guess who she's looking at? just herself. She's not looking at anybody else. And when she tells you, oh my gosh, it's a great picture, it has nothing to do with how you looked. I normally look jacked up in pictures next to her. And
Yep.
she's going to tell me, Tosin, yeah, this is a lovely picture. This is the one we should use. And then I go back and I look at it and I was like, well, that's because you looked great in the picture. Because that's all she was looking at. That's
Yeah.
a good point.
Yeah.
We shouldn't give too much thought. Go
No.
ahead.
And I no, like you said, I mean, no one is thinking about you. They're only
No
thinking
one
about
is thinking about you.
and they're
No
like,
one is thinking about you.
I got to the point with pictures. Like, I'm like, yeah, the camera can only capture what it sees. It's like people are taking a picture, like I don't have to look at it. Like I, I already know what I look like. Like if I look too crazy, like don't post it. But I mean, it's a picture. Smile.
I love it.
Sure.
I love it. I love it. Chris, finish this sentence for me. Because of my experience at my HBCU, I will not.
Because of my experience at my HBCU. I think that's a great question. You got me.
If you don't have an answer, it's okay. It's okay. I love it. I love it. This is the first time without an answer. I'll take it. I'll take it.
First.
I'll take it.
I think because of my HBCU, I will not. So the first, I just like to say whatever comes to my mind. I will not complain. I don't know. Now I'm trying to make it make sense. I think, North Carolina Central is an amazing school. When I was here, of course, these schools, they just build up. They now have a Panera Bread, a Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, like a bunch of things on campus. There's food trucks. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is just perseverance, and just finding out. And I guess going all the way back to the first question, now there's like around it. So first question, right? Turning the camera on myself, I didn't think I did enough. Originally, I wanted to blame the school, but now looking at it, I have to only blame myself, and so I won't complain. I think the school gave me everything that it was supposed to give. It was up to me to take advantage of those resources and those opportunities, and the people that they put in place, because there's really good professors at my HBCU that, like, even when I graduate, right, like some of my friends that were in mass comm as well, like they still talk to these professors, and these professors have helped them get jobs. And that's why I'm like, so maybe it's not the school, maybe it's me. But yeah, I think, everything happens when it's supposed to happen. There's life is great. I think God is great. My HBCU is great.
It's great.
Yeah, life is good. There's no complaints. I love North Carolina Central University.
Chris, before we leave, is there something that I have not brought up that you desperately want to get off your chest? Or is there something that you're working on that you'd love to bless the audience with hearing about it from you first?
Well, first of all, Tosin, this was an amazing interview. I appreciate you for having me. And you brought out a lot of really good answers, things that I have like literally never thought about.
Thank
Or haven't
you.
thought about since they actually happened. Things that we're working on. We're still in season 4 of the HBCU Esports League. Esports and gaming is one of those things where traditionally us Black community will be left behind with any quick change, and so the esports industry has been around for like the last 5 years, or I guess 7 now. But essentially, I mean, the biggest thing there is making sure that our students have equitable opportunities. And so, we're still literally preaching the word every single day. A lot of times it's unbelievable. You asked me about brands. I did not shout out the other brands, so I have to do that. There's Mountain Dew, but I wanted to say this. So talking about opportunities that don't seem real. Mountain Dew has their Real Change Challenge that they've been doing for, I think, 3 years now. They tapped on us for the last 2 years. And so essentially what they wanted to do, and this is like their campaign, their idea. So for me, it was shocking because they're like, hey, we want to do a gaming tournament. We want to serve HBCU students. And we have $500,000 in scholarships from playing the video game. And I'm like, wow.
Wow.
It's so, they came through with what they said. We put these tournaments together. We have these students that are playing. And that was like, I think at that very moment, I kind of realized, I'm like, wow, like this this is why we exist.
Yeah.
So for the first time ever, there's HBCU students with over $70,000 in their bank accounts because they probably took it out in the form of a refund, or they might have used it for school. And
Yeah.
actually, the I think the average HBCU tuition is like $14,000. And so I mean, it's a full ride scholarship for these kids from playing
Absolutely.
video game. Um,
Absolutely.
and there's one student who just won. He's actually a Morgan State student. Tosin, I forget his name. Kmo is his gamer tag. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna find him. I'm gonna find him and make sure we shout him out.
Yeah. So we did this tournament. This was actually last weekend. He won. But before he won, we like to ask all the students, hey, this is a lot of money. Like, what are you gonna do? And so his story was that his mom had lupus. And his dad helps out a lot. His dad is very, very present and there, but he's like, more money won't hurt. And so he wanted to use a portion of his money to go towards his mom, and help pay for her doctor bills and her hospital bills. And then he ended up winning the tournament. And it's like, you can't make this up. Like,
You
you can't
can't make that up.
stories, or you can, but it doesn't have the same impact. And
Yeah.
so, so I mean, we're a media company at heart, but as we like to say, everything that we do is social good through media. I don't think I ever want to do anything that doesn't impact anyone. And so HBCU Esports League season 4 is still here. We are live every Sunday. I think we're live Wednesday this week. So you can watch us at twitch.tv /Cxmmunity. And yeah, I mean, we're still kicking it. We're still kicking it. We're still making sure that students are hired.
Chris, I can't help it. I love every single guest that comes on, and I know it doesn't sound real each time I say it, but I really do love every single thing that we have talked about today. I love your energy. I love the responses that you gave. They're so authentic, and I appreciate that. And we're just going to have quotables from you for a very, very long time to come because of it. To everybody watching, thank you for tuning in to I Love My HBCU ? I hope that we have, Lord have mercy. I know if I were literally just somebody listening because of Chris Peay alone, I'd be subscribing and liking. So I hope we have earned the pleasure of you subscribing and liking I Love My HBCU ? Till next time, yours in HBCU love, Chris Peay. Thank you so much. You've been listening to I Love My HBCU ? Let's keep the conversation going as we share our stories and encourage more practical support of HBCUs, whilst of course holding each other accountable. Don't forget to follow and subscribe for the latest episodes. Until next time, love and lift your HBCU.